Had one of your fans was following up with me.
Welcome to the Bladtcast. Very exciting to be here. There's been so much warmth and love and appreciation for the third and final season of Star Trek Picard. So I assembled two of the biggest curmudgeons that I know for an episode that we're calling Counterpoint at Farpoint. As always, I'm Christian Black. Joining me from New York City, the one, the only Thomas J. Kelly.
Oh my God. Who's already objecting to being called a curmudgeon, but fine.
That's all right. Well, someone who actually his JDate profile just says curmudgeon as the only part of the description is Mr. David Weiss, Salman himself. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us from the best side of Los Angeles, as they say.
Sup, America.
So I want to start with what I think is a great starting point for people that watched week to week as I would review Star Trek Picard season 3. Each of you popped up a couple of times and weren't so happy. I think Sal, they lost you along the way, but I want to start off with a different question. I'll ask you first, Tom, when was the last time that you loved Star Trek? The last time you watched something newly produced and it ended and you went, yep, that was great. Does anything come to mind? Is it even in this century or was it in the 20th century?
Oh, I have thoroughly enjoyed Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
I have strong objections to the J.J. Abrams universe. But I don't hate the J.J. movies as much as I do some of what happened in Star Trek Picard. I thought, say what you want about JJ's movies, he always stayed true to the characters and who they were. And I think that was my big contention with Picard. It was inconsistent. It was inconsistent with the dream of Star Trek. And I want to be careful complaining too much. There were things I enjoyed in the last 2 or 3 episodes thoroughly. If I ignore the first 7.5 episodes. But the overall, if you just did the last 3 episodes, I might,
right.
If this podcast,
if that had been like just a standalone movie, the last part of the season, you would have been happier. Is that what you're saying?
I would have had far less to complain about. I think, and I know David's an actual professional TV writer, and the one good thing that comes out,
tools down.
Yeah. And here's the one benefit of the Hollywood strike for writers right now is it stops Terry Matalas from producing new Star Trek for a little while. We need a breather. In fact,
give that a bell.
In fact, and I know we have a lot of mutual writer friends. I feel like they are taking one for the team in the big picture of the Star Trek fandom.
So you think that this isn't about any kind of royalties or contract disputes? This is everybody got together and we have to stop this guy from making more Star Trek. I think that's an interesting theory. I think I might be out in the picket line one day next week with my wife and her sister. So I'll float that out there. I'll be like, we're just doing this because of Matalas, right?
Yeah. Everybody you see on the street is one person not writing a new Star Trek episode.
Not writing a new Star Trek. Sal, oh my gosh, he disappeared. He, so he'll pop back.
I didn't realize that was that offensive. I didn't realize that was.
Exactly. The Wi-Fi out there on the west side is not what it is here in the beautiful San Fernando Valley. But in any case, yeah, I think that Strange New Worlds, a lot of people were happy with. When David pops back in, I was going to mention it that he didn't watch Picard season 2 because he heard me going on about how much I hated it. And when he was ramping up for this, he's like, do I need to watch it? I said, absolutely not. And I stand by that. There's a couple of things that you're like, okay, maybe I don't get it, but it was so bad that if you just want the ride, the one last ride with the whole gang, season 3 is the place to be, I would say. But
and I'll even say, listen, if you're new to Star Trek Picard, if you're coming into this podcast saying, should I watch Star Trek Picard? One, the best and most magical moments that all the fans were craving are given away on TikTok. My For You page. Are we allowed to do spoilers? Do we have to say spoiler alert?
No, yeah.
Cover
So
my
what
ass
we'll
here?
do now, here's the thing. What we'll do now is we'll say that, it's been out for a couple of weeks. So if you haven't watched season 3 of Star Trek Picard, you shouldn't be checking this out because we are going to talk about all the spoilers. So I like to give a warning, but I do like to always talk about the spoilers because it gets so difficult when you try to tiptoe around it. And there's really no reason for that. So go ahead. You think that it would work well as a TikTok?
I'm a sucker for, and the band is getting back together again. My favorite scene in all of cinema is the end of Star Trek 4. And I have a big emotional reason for it too, where I could actually project certain things into it. But when Spock says goodbye to his dad, and then the crew finds the Enterprise A. Magical. That said, they really tried to do that about 6 times in 3 episodes. Like they were going for what would tug at Tom Kelly's strings while doing, quite frankly, low-end 21st century writing. And just to reference any opinions I have today is I had Dave Blass on my podcast. I don't think I've done your podcast since having him.
I did on the after show. I actually referenced that episode a number of times because I thought it was, I think you and I have slightly different impressions of that. I thought it was a great conversation. I think it was great that he took the time to talk to somebody who was just, in his view, mouthing off on Twitter about how he didn't like it. And to me, the best moment was he just point blank asks you, what is it that you didn't like about it? And then, you were able to provide what it is. And then, it's like, okay, well, you have your thing. And that is episode 286 of the Tom Kelly Show for people who want to find it. So you're talking.
Glad you remembered.
I just I literally just looked it up now. So, so you talked to the production designer for Star Trek Picard season 3, Dave Blass, and so I just wanted to give that background. And what were you going to say about that conversation?
He was very generous with his time, and he blatantly said at the beginning of the interview, which took some of the fun out of it, which was, Tom, remember, this is show business. I'm here to do a damn job. And then he started, and the problem is they defended every creative decision with why they are geniuses. There was a hubris to their writing. And if, like, you're sitting in front of the 1987 set, and he kept saying, well, the bridge doesn't have to have carpeting. Yeah, but you know what? I'd like the chroma key or the chroma to be up high enough so I could see what you've actually designed. Because if you look at his pictures that he posts on Twitter, some of the stuff looks really good. And then whoever's doing the color correcting has it so dark, it's just not fun to watch. And then his reply was, yeah, well, they did that for an episode of Game of Thrones. And I'm like, yes, can we learn from that mistake? And honestly, I think part of why I liked the last 2 or 3 episodes of Picard was once they got to the Enterprise D set, it's like, all right, I can see these people. I can see the show now. It's silly.
Right. It looks like the show.
They were trying, the 20, and again, what was missing with Picard compared to Strange New Worlds is they made the 25th century a brooding century nobody wants to live in with the look, which is not the Gene Roddenberry vision. That was their art direction. And then I also argue with, again, and I think this is going to come out of the strike in a way, I'm going to sound anti-writer, but I'm not for our friends because they are good writers. But there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of crappy writers working out there right now. And a lot of them were working on Star Trek Picard. I made this argument to Dave Blass, and he twisted it. I would love to approve each script. And what I really wanted to say was, you know what, I should have been the continuity director, because they would say one thing and then they'd say something else a minute later. Like there was a line on the last episode, Data, even my daughter can't fly through this mess. And I want to say, really? The daughter they called Crash LaForge in episode 2. That's the reputation you're pushing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even referencing itself well. And these are the people who saw it. You know, basically what they're doing is they're throwing shit out there and they're saying we should like it. And honestly, if you watch Star Trek with less enthusiasm than with what I do, it's fine if you watch it as a TikTok or a scene. But Data, even my daughter can't fly through there. Frakes, Riker was making fun of her, calling her Crash LaForge for a good 5-minute scene. And then I think a lot of it was, the character of Jack Riker was just unappealing from the beginning.
Jack Crusher.
Jack Crusher.
Could be Jack Picard,
Crusher.
but he wears the name Crusher as a badge of honor. Yeah. Well, let me loop our friend Mr. Weiss in here. Yeah. So
a new laptop,
I think that might be the way to go. But just make sure you clean out all your cookies before you get rid of the old ones. So the thing that I wanted to mention, I had mentioned that you skipped season 2 of Picard based on my very negative reaction to it, and I stand by that decision because of how just awful it was. But I have the same question for you that I asked Tom. Sure. What do you think? What was the last time that you watched something that was Star Trek, an episode, a movie, or whatever, and you're like, that was really well done. That was great.
I thought the first season of Discovery was really well done.
Yeah, I liked the second season of Discovery and a lot less then, but that big part of that, I think, was Anson Mount as Captain Pike. I think that elevated that. The Mirror Universe, Emperor Giorgio. I think that season was good. And my line about Discovery at that time was I would say I'd call it the best show on TV, except of course it's not on TV because it was on something called CBS All Access back then. Somehow people can wrap their heads around Paramount Plus in general. Well, let's talk about season 3 as a whole for a few minutes here, but then we'll really get into how it ended. So, David, you and I talked a few times as the season was unfolding, and I think for the most part, at least early on, you seemed to be happy with it. Is that a relatively accurate description of how you felt about it?
Initially, I think I was satisfied with it. I was never super happy. I have a lot of problems with the writing, as Tom was saying. My biggest criticism of what they did was, and it's not entirely the fault of the people that are actually doing it, because they've received direction from up above. That
I mean, let me just interject. Obviously, there's expectations from the studio. Kurtzman and Orsi are producers on everything now, so you are getting input. And so you can put a lot of the blame on, the guy who was the showrunner. You can put a blame on the writers, but we don't know, and we probably never will know what it was like. Here's what we have to get out of this season. You have to work within this parameter. You have to do this, do that. Well, so I think that's something that's definitely worth mentioning.
That's a good one. I think they were hamstrung by those kinds of directives. And not only that, I'm going to use the word undisciplined, creatively undisciplined, because, and this is something that I usually put into my writing, is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there are a lot of choices that they made. Granted, Tom is right about inconsistencies, but if you took Jack Crusher out of that show, don't you have like the same show with the Borg? And there's a lot of stuff that they cram in.
Yeah.
Because they want something, they needed to leave it open-ended. But I really thought the right choice for me would have been, I thought Picard was going to die.
Yeah,
I thought there was going to be some kind of sacrifice. He's going to sacrifice himself so that his son can live, and there would be, that kind of coming together. But not only did that not happen, but afterwards, Patrick Stewart was on the internet saying, "Yeah, if they need me, I'll come back." And that's just kind of like,
yeah, and meanwhile, a gentleman in a long flowing black robe with a scythe is at the door.
yeah, right.
Sir Patrick is like, 1 moment. I'm writing a blog making fun of James Corden. I'll be right with you, whomever might be there.
That was so disappointing to me.
The idea that he could do more.
Yeah, just the idea that, like, you go through all this. Oh, it's the final season. The last time we're bullshit. They're just going to, like I said before,
milk the cow.
Doesn't mean you should, but they're going to wring this out. Yeah. The very last drop of Star Trek blood, and that's not what Gene Roddenberry had in mind.
No, and let's remember we live in a world where the rock band The Who went on a farewell tour in 1982, and that might surprise you. Some people in our audience may not have been born yet, and maybe your parents or even grandparents went and saw The Who because they still play to this day. So yes, there's farewell tours, finales. When you think about a different genre entirely, I think Friday the 13th Part 5 is called The Final Chapter. They made like 8 more after that. So it's I think that. And by the way, to what Tom was saying earlier about LaForge's daughter, Dominica Saxon says they should have said not even Admiral Sulu could fly through this maze. And he also says Kirk will always be, oh, Captain, my Captain. But Picard was pretty good. Still, he should have died. I think when they brought his old body back, I was like, all right, this is going to be some reason that, he's going to end up back in the body. And then, and then even when we had the Borg factored into it, I'm like, all right, so obviously he's going to die. And, they didn't really make choices like that. Was there a moment for you, David, that the season started to you felt like it had gotten away from you? You said you were satisfied, content enough.
I would say about episode 5.
Right in the middle. Okay.
Right smack dab in the middle. If you wanted to do, I get it. Okay. In terms of like the double villain, the Borg and the Founders are working together. I can get behind that. The two greatest villains, in the last couple of eras.
Yeah. From like the Next Generation.
And I understand that. Yeah, that's fine, but have that up front. I thought that Amanda Plummer was going to be, the main villain, and they killed her off.
Yeah.
That's just like.
And the
then you don't
changelings were barely mentioned again the rest of the season. Yeah.
The last episode.
Yeah. So, Tom, I remember talking to you early in the season, and there was a point where the story hadn't progressed enough, but about episode probably around the same time, I remember you were saying, I was like, well, so there's going to be 6 or 8 of these. And I was like, no, there's going to be 10 episodes. And you were like, why are we telling so much story? Which, in the old days we would get 22 to 24 episodes and it felt like not enough, but 10 may have been, wringing out the sponge a little bit too much. Is that where you were coming down as these episodes were released, Tom?
So it was too much in a serialized format. David, what was the word you just used? Creative laziness. There was a big word you just used.
Undisciplined creativity.
And that was my problem with the whole thing.
No, the other
creatively undisciplined or undisciplined creativity, whichever one you want. That were those 2 words in whatever order you just said it stuck with me. And I think David has just hit my note for the whole series. I think the hard part with serialized storytelling, to write a 12-hour movie, you need one creative vision. And then you need little writers who chime in. And frankly, you got to be really good. I don't know if we're allowed to use your wife's resume, but your wife has worked on a number of serialized shows. That one, I think your wife's the shows I remember she wrote were really good. But I also, quite frankly, remember she was also working for geniuses who had a map. And the problem with Picard was we had the actors, we had the deal signed, and even with all of the CBS internet Star Trek properties, nobody had a map. The one guy who had the map at the beginning of Discovery, he got fired for sexual harassment or whatever the heck it was.
Well, there's like 7 or 8 people that got fired. I mean, Brian Fuller is the one who he started Discovery, and he wanted it to be an anthology series, and they said no, we don't want that. So he only did the first 2 episodes. But there are so many people since then, and I think that that's the biggest problem with that show. But then you can extend it to all of these CBS All Access / Paramount Plus series, except for Strange New Worlds, because I don't think that they had turmoil. But there are very different creative people involved in all 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard. Terry Matalas kind of comes in and steps up in season 2. And I mean, I refer to it all the time. In the middle of season 2 of Picard, they released the trailer for season 3 because they were like, yeah, we know how bad this is, but stick with us. Look what we got for you.
Yeah,
you
might
know?
get worse.
And
you want to see
here's where I
Data?
wish
You want to
David-
see Worf? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, here's where I wish David had seen Picard season 2. The undisciplined creativity, frankly, in a lot of ways, if you and I were actually looking at this as more than a kids show, it's the same beats as Picard season 2. You know, when a Star Trek writer, and I think this has been a problem since Next Generation season 6, if we don't know what to do, let's throw the Borg at it. You know, and I think that was the big problem with Voyager, is they did so much Borg stuff that it was just getting boring. I mean, part of the joy of the Borg was the mystery of it. You know, okay, giant, mysterious cube we don't know much about, giant enemy, and now, you know, we all know what a unimatrix is. We all know what a tertiary adjunct is. You know, and my problem with Picard not building on itself. You're telling me we have a giant robotic bad guy race and nobody's making a phone call to the good guy race we had in the last thing. And even at the end of season 2 of Picard, when the Borg took over all of the starships and now we're networking them. I mean, and even too, you know, and I just, from the minute they said it, the idea of networking all the ships, or honestly putting all the ships in one spot for Fleet Week or whatever the heck it was, Frontier Day. I'm like, hi, have we seen the pilot for the 1970s Battlestar Galactica? That's how they all got destroyed. You know, It was, we're having a big parade and the Cylons came and got everybody. I mean, it's just, you know, even in, it's just, it was written, at times it's written for children, and then they throw in enough fucks in it. They're like, we're a grown-up show. I'm like, no, well, not really. Game of Thrones was a deep show. You know, we could go through the list of science fiction things. Battlestar Galactica 2005 was a deep show, except for when it lost its way. And I forget why I forget what the excuses were for it losing its way, but eventually Battlestar Galactica.
I believe that's one of many shows that was very negatively impacted by the previous writer's strike. Lost and Heroes immediately come to mind, of shows that it's sort of like you couldn't really just reset it at that point. And I'm of course, you know, there's a lot of other things. I think that sometimes these shows go on a couple years longer than they should have. And as long as Picard does end with season 3, I think it was already too much. But at least they got out when they did. To Tom's earlier point, Dominicus Saxon again says, Tom's wrong. They had a map, but it was for MapQuest. So maybe they should have updated it, I think is what Mr. Saxon.
I get what he's saying. You know what? I appreciate the punchline, though I disagree with the facts. MapQuest is a great resource, friend, and you should be trying it.
Well, also, Sal, we could have made it an LA 90s reference. The map was a Thomas guide.
I still have one.
Yeah, which I never had one. I moved here right after that, and I did use MapQuest a lot.
Wow, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like driving. I used to put, when I first moved here, quick aside, I would put the Thomas guide on the steering wheel and do that. It didn't help.
Yeah. No, I used to do the same thing with Hustler, but
what made the Thomas guide, and not to diverge for a second, but since you brought it up, what made a Thomas guide different from a map?
It was like a phone book. I've seen them. I knew people who had them, and you could just refer to like, okay, I'm on this part of Coldwater Canyon. Let me figure out where I can go. Oh, there's a boulder in the street. I got to go a different way. I don't even know how to do that. So you would go, and there's a really detailed map. So like, a map is great for freeway driving, or even like, just to get to point A to point B, but just driving around. I mean, if you were a production assistant in Los Angeles at that time, you needed to have it because you were dropping scripts off at actors' houses, and you had to make sure that the right producer had her IUD in her desk, and if she had forgotten it, you had to go back and get it. I won't say who that story is about, but it is true. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
What were high points for you, Tom? It seems like, because we've talked generally since the season ended, but I knew we were going to do this show, so we didn't really talk that much about it. We were too busy having In and Out at Midnight and other adventures.
Well, I was saying, I actually saw you in person, and I could tell you were resisting because you wanted to save my
save it for the air. That's what Regis and Kathy Lee used to always say, and everything that's good for Regis and Kathy Lee is good for me.
So first, what's good? And I could watch it on mute. I could watch it on mute, and I might have enjoyed the first 3/4 of the season on mute better. It's fun to see a Star Trek ship. It's fun to see Starfleet. It's fun to see our actors. It's fun to see the old actors together again. It really was. I think it was. I think the problem was the writing and how they tried to fill the empty 20 years. I would have enjoyed so much more Beverly being an admiral than a random medical frontierswoman in an old ship. Like, that never made sense. And you know how I know that wasn't yeah, and well, we're going crazy. You know how I know that plot didn't work? Because we tried it with 7 of 9, where it actually kind of worked. I hate to say it.
Oh yeah, no, she was way more interesting as like whatever those Rangers were. And then when she was in Starfleet, the idea, like her character in season 2, I was like, okay, I can buy into this. But yeah, her as a button down Starfleet officer, I was like, nah, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah, and that's my whole issue with the ending, which I know you're going to get to. And again, there's something to be said about the love of the characters, whether or not they did the right things with the characters or where I wanted them to go. I thought they put Geordie LaForge exactly where I wanted him to be, a high-ranking officer working on the nostalgia and future of Starfleet. Got it.
And an occasional fill-in host on Jeopardy.
You make jokes, but I still think he could save Jeopardy. But put that on the side.
He would have been the best. He would have absolutely been the best one. And then put Aaron Rodgers over and Reading Rainbow just for fun. Come on. Let's just play musical chairs with all the shows.
You know what? I would have loved that until I heard Aaron Rodgers' Vax policies. That actually, 2019, Tom loves that map you just laid out. That said, hang on. I'm now getting nostalgic about Aaron Rodgers hosting Reading Rainbow.
And look, Aaron Rodgers plays in New Jersey now, so his policies are going to be embraced like a big plate of scrapple with a side of pork roll. So, but anyway,
okay.
Go ahead, finish your thoughts, Tom.
I like the ship. I like the ships. I liked seeing Star Trek. I liked that it was going until I actually watched it. I think they were lazy with where I wanted the characters to be. Crusher as a medical random ranger never worked for me. The idea that I don't think Beverly would have hidden a son from Jean-Luc Picard or anybody. I just don't think that that character flaw never worked with me. You loved them enough to work with them. Your 20 years of friendship, blah, 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 married, not married. That just never worked for me the way they wrote it out. Jack Crusher, a 60-year-old man playing 20, doesn't work for me. And it was just more, let me tell you what I've done. I'm a rock and roller. Jack Crusher just never worked for me. Worf as a secret agent, I thought was a waste of what had been set up for him, but fine. I actually thought Raffi was done moderately well, mainly because there was not as much with her too. Hang on, going through my other old, Riker and the Riker Troy romance. I thought that was flat, but I have bigger things to complain about. You're telling me he gave up his career to go live with the wife, to go have the perfect life, and neither of them were quite happy there. I don't know. There was something flat there. And then, you know what? And Data coming back, and I thought they answered everything I'm going to critique well. But we went through this whole big thing of Brent Spiner wants a big death scene. He's up to 3 now. They went through the big dramatic death of Data in season 1 of Picard. And you know what? There's something to be said about, I want to die. It actually wasn't, it was a long and drawn out. But fine, you want to die, we killed you, and yay, I'm back. I want to work again in season 2. It's like, pick one. You want to be dead or you don't want to be dead. And elderly Data, who suddenly still has fast hands, and this was my problem with Picard being put into the robot body. Is he a robot or is he a human with the robot mind? Yeah. He has robot powers when it's convenient, and he does, again, and that's the continuity director in me getting mad.
Right. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Brent Spiner had a little bit of David Caruso-itis, where you figure like there's going to be so many opportunities. I want to get away from this thing. And then you realize there are not those opportunities. I would like to go back and do the thing. But in David Caruso's case, it was a completely different franchise. And all he was able to do was take off sunglasses and cue the theme song from The Who, which brings us full circle. What were the things for you, Mr. Weiss, that you felt worked the best in this season 3 of Picard as we ramp up to talking about the finale?
Not a lot.
Okay. Well, you were just mad that Riker didn't get to use his pizza oven. Oh wait, you didn't even see that in season 2.
No, I did see that.
That was season 1. Yeah,
season
yeah,
one.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it was nice to see everybody. It's
sure.
like it was like Star Trek : The Big Chill.
Yeah.
Nice to see everybody, but
that's a nice catchphrase.
We're all gonna go back to our lives afterwards.
It's the high school reunion, and then you're like, oh yeah, I never liked any of you.
Right.
And,
I know why. I know why I haven't been in touch with 20 years.
Yeah, I think that was Beverly. That even though I agree with Tom, it didn't seem to fit her character. That's the choice they made, and she's like, oh yeah, I didn't talk to these people for like 25 years or whatever it was.
Never made sense to me.
No, I agree. Yeah. So all right, go ahead, Tom.
No, and just to your point on Beverly, she was just the whiny, on The Next Generation, she was the whiny, brilliant doctor. And I just don't see a whiny, brilliant person camping and being, Dr. Crusher, frontier medical woman, as you put it. I'm getting angry again. I'm sorry. I'm getting angry.
No, look, we're at the halfway point. We need you to get angry. We didn't book you to have Bruce Banner on the show. We want the Hulk, so come on, let's work up to it. And as we talk about the finale, there's obviously points to be made about the penultimate episode, because season 9, we actually we have them on the bridge again. It's not season 9, sorry, episode 9. We have them on the bridge again. We had gotten them together. They were in the ready room, so those elements really kind of ramp up into the finale. As the finale was going along, I personally felt like, this is very fan servicey, but I am a fan and I'm enjoying being serviced, as I so often do. Thank you for laughing at that. And I was definitely along for the ride, wanted to enjoy it, but I'm typically not poking too many holes into it. But as you watched the finale, and we can include episode 9 because there are some key moments in there, what were your thoughts, Tom? Was there any moment where you're like, all right, you're about the same age I was. So we were like 18, I think, when the show ended. And, there were a couple movies after that. But so if like 25-year-old Tom could be told like, well, you will see them again in a show, but it might not be very good. Personally, I'll take it. But what did you think as you watched it? Did you think like, yeah, me in my 20s would have been okay with this?
I am ashamed to say this, but I'm fine. It happened. I don't want to. I'm not. Again, I love it on TikTok. I'll love it in clips, but I watch the whole, like, whereas when Next Generation went to Netflix, I watched it all again. Maybe not intensely, but I pressed play. I would let it go. It'd be background TV. This will not be background TV again for me. I will not watch this a second time. Will I watch the last episode or two? Maybe. But again, it's the lazy, undisciplined creativity. This was essentially beat for beat, almost the end of Picard season 2, just done better with a better lit bridge set. It's
right.
And maybe, and what I always thought was great about Star Trek when it wasn't so mass produced was you could draw a little bit from it. You could service the fans a little bit less and it would still be good. Like when you get into, like, on Succession, they just killed off Logan Roy in season 4, in episode 4 of the final season. Did I just ruin that for you? Yeah, it made the news. Get over it.
Yeah,
but
no, I know.
Here's the thing. If you're going to throw a bomb at the show, the bomb has to hit. And
Agreed.
So what was that? And that's the thing with these guys is they're always like, oh, we're going to do something new. We're going to take them into a different direction. And my whole problem with the ending of the show was what I would have liked Picard to be rather than what it was I would rather it have been an exploration of where we thought the characters would be. There's a great write-up of Star Trek Generations and why it failed. That or it fizzled, if not failed, was people were hoping there would be a juxtaposition of Picard's by the book management style versus Kirk's seat of his pants management style. And my problem with the Picard is pretending that Picard was always Kirk. Picard broke the rules, but he did it very slowly and painfully. He's a man who adhered to the Prime Directive and was willing to let people die because he believed in the Prime Directive. The way that this Picard looks at himself is not what I grew up with, and that gives me a distaste in my mouth. That said, I liked the ending of Beverly being at Starfleet Medical. You know why I like that? Because that's where we left her 20 years ago. You're telling me her growth was to be at the exact ending of where she was 20 years ago? Yay. That's not, it's what we wanted, but whatever. Picard and Beverly, both admirals. I like that. And then are we allowed to discuss I loved the end scene on the Enterprise D. Are we now allowed to get into Hulk mode? Am I allowed to?
No, because I want to let David get up to speed because we'll hit the same point, and then of course you invoke Star Trek Generations, and it's always worth pointing out that all we wanted was what would it be like if Kirk and Picard finally met? What would they do? And we didn't think the answer was make breakfast. So it was a little bit of a letdown. But so, David, as you're watching the finale, and we're going to talk about the way that it ends and what it might set up for the future, things like that. That's a separate conversation. But as you're watching, our characters ultimately prevail. Big spoiler there that they prevailed. And getting to that point. You seem to have not been that happy after you watched it. I got a text from you, so I knew you didn't enjoy it.
It was kind of a limp noodle. You know,
Yeah. Which is the other thing it says in your J-Day profile, by the way.
That's right. Curmudgeon, limp noodle.
And you got a lot of swipes though, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, a lot of swipes. Well, I would swipe left on the final episode of Star Trek Picard.
Ah,
wow,
like that.
Really?
Yeah. You know,
Well,
just,
and you know what I just forgot too? The action scenes. Because you're right, the lazy creativity of, you're telling me that, first of all, with Jack Crusher as a Borg, that one, he wound up going to the Borg anyway. We could have skipped episodes 1 to 7 and saved the lives of everybody on the Titan. And then two, you're telling me that we cured Jack Crusher being a Borg by giving him a hug?
Love conquers all, Tom.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
I'm not thrilled with it. You know,
Yeah.
love does not conquer all. Love is great, but sometimes you get stung like a bee.
But you know, love can conquer bee stings. You know, if
That's
you
true.
just have enough love in your heart.
That's true. But you
And
know,
love also handles crocodile bites. I think
right.
if
But,
you have enough love.
Back to the
Yeah.
final episode for a moment.
Yes, please.
You know, they were hamstrung, the writers, by the fact that they needed to have a backdoor pilot going, so they couldn't kill anybody off. They couldn't have like Troy and Riker splitting up forever.
Yeah.
They couldn't
Yeah,
have
you go raise that weirdo daughter of ours. I don't want any part
you know,
of that.
and by the way, who was watching the daughter?
They had like a robot household, didn't they?
Well,
So,
I mean, but
yeah.
still, I mean, you can't go off and save the galaxy with an 11-year-old.
So wait,
kid.
you're telling me that in Buck Rogers in the 25th century, Twiki couldn't have been a babysitter? You think that R2D2 and C3PO aren't able to babysit?
I don't know. I don't know about
it's
that.
a valid question.
It's something for another show, probably.
Yeah, I don't know what that show is.
Yeah, they were hamstrung by having to do a backdoor pilot.
Except that they went and killed off the only character that I liked from the show, which is Captain Shaw. And like when he comes on as a dick and he's a terrible character and you're like, oh, this guy's an asshole. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like him. And, you know, he's like, I want to see more of him. I definitely don't want more Raffi. I don't need Captain 7. I'd like the I've said on multiple shows, I want Star Trek Schmuck from Chicago. I want that guy's show.
I thought the spinoff was going to be Schmuck from Chicago.
Right.
And 7.
Dipshit from Chicago. Dipshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Very
important. Dipshit from Chicago.
Star
yeah,
Trek,
exactly.
Dipshit from Chicago. And 7.
Yeah, dipshit from Chicago, parentheses, living large.
Living large. Yeah. Star Trek living large.
Star Trek living large in the Windy City with Todd Stashwick as Captain Shaw.
He should have come out wearing a Cubs hat.
Strikes me as more of a Chi Sox fan, but that's neither here nor there. I think that, Tom, I think that the common ground that we all probably have is, Terry Matalas has talked about wanting to do something that he calls Star Trek Legacy, because we introduced these children characters, including Jack Crusher. Right. And we've got Tula Forges.
This is Star Trek Muppet Babies. You know, why do we need this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the Star Trek Muppet Babies is the original Starfleet Academy show that they were going to do, where it was Young Bones and Young Kirk. They have a different Starfleet Academy show too. Right. But in general, the Muppet Babies format usually works. Think about Flintstone Kids, think about all the show, I've been developing for 40 years Lil Honeymooners, where, where Jackie Gleason drives a little cartoon bus. And, when Alice gets a little mouthy, he just hits her in the face with a frying pan. But I don't know if this is the place to share that. So perhaps we should get back on topic.
Also, we're on strike, Christian. You can't pitch anything.
That's a great point. All right. So I'll strike that from the record. I feel like Tom was going to say something and then thought better of it.
No, I'm enjoying being with you two right now. There's nothing I could have said to tag that other than Yeah, you guys are funny. That's it. I'm sorry.
Hey, we're not on strike from being funny. That's a full-time job too, you know.
All right. So now back.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
But even too, we haven't even talked. I mean, so the Star Trek Legacy. We could put this on the side that there's about 6 Star Trek shows, and I think the problem with this chunk of Paramount Star Trek that will not be included when we look back on this as the golden age of Star Trek or the golden age of television is I think right now, what are the standards for success? I mean, are enough people paying for Paramount Plus to watch this? Is that it? Is it generating enough headlines?
This is it. The one standard.
Yeah, but how many? Yeah, but for real,
the money bag. I agree.
It's platinum.
How do you track that metric?
I just to expand on that though, Tom, I'll just say that their streaming service, now called Paramount Plus, it was CBS All Access, was built on the idea that Star Trek fans will pay to keep a series of, as long as you have a number of Star Trek series throughout the year, they'll pay for it. And then you build on top of that. So basically we're who they took for granted. We're who they assumed. But I think that what they need to take into consideration is that there is a level of quality. I mean, Disney Plus was built in a similar way. It's like we'll put a lot of Star Wars and Marvel on, and then people will remain subscribed. But I think that just talking to other people in general, I'm happy with what we've gotten Star Trek wise since Paramount entered the streaming world. But that I'm not in the majority. I think that there's a lot of ups and downs. And David, you were saying you liked season 1 of Discovery.
Yeah.
There's been 4 seasons, or we're about to get the 4th season since then. So they've done a lot more episodes. What were you going to say, Tom?
Oh, no, Tom, go ahead.
No, you know what? Listen, and you're right. I'm in that group of people who will probably watch even if I don't have to. I'm not watching Star Trek, the kids show on Nickelodeon.
I watched the pilot, Star Trek Prodigy, that's called.
And I actually didn't mind it. It was like I didn't mind it. I'm not feeling the urge for it. It's kind of like Josie and the Pussycats in outer space is how I described Star Trek Prodigy. Look at me, we found a spaceship.
Yeah, no, Josie and the Pussycats in outer space, though. Specifically,
I had such a crush on Melody.
I liked the guy I liked the character who basically was the same animatics as Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, but they just changed the color of his shirt. But we may have lost the lead a little bit, but I know what you're saying though. It's basically the problem for me with Prodigy was that I was watching it and I forgot I wasn't watching a Star Wars show. Something came up and I'm like, oh, right, this is a Star Trek show. It just felt like all the Star Wars animation. And I think I watched, there was like whatever the premiere was, it was like 90 minutes. But so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But Tom, you're already, people love Lower Decks. I've watched a little of it. I'm like, my Star Trek doesn't need to be wacky.
People love Costco.
So here's my thing with Lower Decks is I hated the idea of it at first. But at a certain point, it admits it's a parody, but yet it's true to the spirit, and suddenly I'm back in on it. That's how it is, and that's the right way to say it. If you treat it, and I have permission to treat it like a joke. The thing with the other crap that we're watching right now is I'm supposed to treat it as canon. Like, yes, of course there's new Klingon heads. Like going with Discovery season 1. You're just not caught up with the times with the new Klingon heads. And then they write 3 episodes about why their heads and haircuts are changing. And I'm like, now, I don't need this. This is not good television. We have not addressed, and I know we only have 10 minutes left. The biggest thing that pissed me off is the lack of respect for content and whatnot. And if you don't mind, give me a second to ramble. I'll tell you a story. I had a friend named Kevin Lamoureux. He was my freshman year roommate in college. And Kevin said, when he wanted to piss me off, he would make fun of Star Trek. And this is right when Star Trek Generations came out. And
that sounds smart, by the way. That sounds like sounds like a wise man who knew you well.
Yeah, and he knew enough about Star Trek to make fun of it with detail, but also was aloof enough to say he didn't like it. And one day when he was pissing me off when I'm putting up a Star Trek poster in our room or something, he goes, "Yeah, Star Trek's awful. What? Why do they have all these ships? What is there? An Enterprise used car lot? How many Enterprises do they have? There's always a new Enterprise. There's always a new Enterprise. Did they sell them in a used car lot? What, Tom? Are they at a used car lot?" And he kept doing that one line. And I just remember getting more and more enraged, and it was right when they blew up the Enterprise D. And it's like, yeah, they just whatever they want, they just make up. They're in a factory. Why do they call them spaceships? Why don't they just call them Enterprises? And then here we go in the last two episodes. You have the Enterprise F comes out in this beautiful, majestic shot, and now we're renaming the Titan. Why? I would have liked. I wouldn't have minded. Actually, one of the things that gave me a headache was seeing the crew of the Enterprise on the bridge of the Titan. It just did not work for me. And it wasn't even the Titan. It was a new Titan. You know what? If they just kept it Riker's Titan, I would have, that actually would not have bothered me. There was always just these little, like, we want to say this, but we're really saying this. Like, it's a brand new ship, except that we're using a 20-year-old engine. Like it was just all these little effing incongruities.
Yeah.
I don't think I've used that word in 20 years. These little incongruities made me angry. And then when I saw they renamed it the Enterprise G, we created, fuck you. Actually, that's what I say. Enterprise G.
So you're saying is that what they renamed it, you felt like they were calling it directly to you, the Enterprise-FU. That's basically what you felt like they were doing. I earlier conversations I had, there were people who, like I did, I thought that they were going to name it the USS Picard, which I thought would have been nice. And I also feel like the reason why they renamed the Titan instead of giving us a new Enterprise G is just money, because they're like, we are not building a new set for one scene. You're going to use the Titan. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want a Captain 7 with Raffi as her number one and, coming up with some cockamamie idea why Jack Crusher gets to be on the bridge, even though he's got like half a pip, I'm not on board with that. I felt like there were elements as the season went along. I'm like, oh, there's things that I would like to see, but then the show that they set up is not the show that I want to see. And everyone who knows me knows how I feel about Q. I don't like Q because Q is magic, and magic does not belong in Star Trek. Case closed. But I have always enjoyed the actor's portrayal, John Delancey. I thought that season 2 was just awful the way it was written. There was an element of like, oh, it's fun to see him in scenes with Jean-Luc. But the satisfaction from season 2 of Picard was that Q was dead and we would never see him again. And then he comes back to talk to Jack. And I'm sure his dad would, like a year later, his dad would have told him about Q. Oh, you knew what he looked like, did you? You see him and you know, you must be Q. He doesn't even wear the pointy hat. How do you know that it's him? And if Q is going to visit anybody, he's going to visit Jean-Luc, isn't he? What were you going to say, Tom? Don't wait for the translation. Sorry.
Okay, so my rebuttal to that is an encounter at Farpoint, part 2. Riker watches basically half of episode 1 in the ready room.
Yeah. Okay,
so that's rebuttal 1. Rebuttal 2 is maybe the mom mentioned stories 2 over 20 years, fine. But here is what drove me nuts about that moment. Is I thought, again, season 2 was a cesspool of Picard. But that last scene with Q dying, and again, some of this is me editing dialogue in my imagination, but I thought the Q death scene was meaningful. It was fine. All right, whatever. I was trying to teach you one last lesson to deal with your mom's grief. I would have loved that whole plot line if it were in 1 hour. Not in 8
fair.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, but they definitely, you want to talk about squeezing out the chamois. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, they tried. I get what they were trying for. Mental illness is real. Oh, shit. Hang on. Hang on. You guys still there? There we go.
Yeah, we're here. Tom has another podcast starting right now. So he's
Hang on. Let me hit do not disturb on that. Sorry. Do not disturb. See if
Yeah, that's all right. While you're doing
Back
that,
on.
from across the pond, Craig Robinson checking in from the UK. I feel a stressed Eric situation on here. Loving the rants. This is what we were building to over the last 54 minutes. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
So, God damn it. And now, fuck it. Why is my phone hooked up to my laptop? That's another
It's a
story.
great
later.
question.
It is a great question.
But I hit. All right. So back to you. Let me see if turning the phone off will stop the call.
There's only one
so
solution, Tom. You're going to have to throw your phone out the window. Go ahead.
So here's my thing. Okay,
good enough.
Now,
we'll take it. All right, finish your thought.
So here's my thing about that end scene. They undisciplined creativity. They undid the only thing I liked about Picard season 2, which was a meaningful death scene. We could argue about what it ramped up to, but it was great acting. And now he's back because we're supposed to like it. I mean, again, it just thank God for the writer's strike. And don't get me started on the whole Guinan's bar. You're telling me that we're all recreating a bar we never saw in 20 years of content, except for arguably the worst season of Picard. Why do we keep going back to that? Is it because we put so much money into the set that?
Well, did you like how they referenced Guinan starting to give us the eye, but Whoopi was nowhere on set? So we're to believe that the character is there in the bar, but we don't actually see her.
She must be a pain to work with if they didn't put her in for one scene.
Well, no, I don't think it's that.
So
she doesn't. Tom has worked
her.
with her and has very nice things to say about her. But she doesn't fly, right? She drives cross country. Isn't that?
Oh, she's over that. I bet you.
Oh, okay.
I think it's. I don't want to read into. I don't want to create the illusion that I have inside information I do not have. But she's a joy to work with, and she loves Star Trek. And to her credit, made a big deal about getting the cast of Picard onto The View. So she helped promote
also made sure to introduce you to Leonard Nimoy on the set of The View during the show. Actually,
Leonard
wasn't just on the set.
Yeah. And she introduced me to Patrick Stewart, who every time I bash Picard, I feel a little bit bad about.
Which, by the way, that clip of you meeting Leonard Nimoy is also featured in episode 286 of the Tom Kelly Show, which features your interview with Dave Blass, the production designer of Star Trek Picard. And I have promoted that more than I plug my own podcast. I plug that episode of the Tom Kelly Show. There are many good episodes of the Tom Kelly Show. Most of them have me on it, but there's ones without me that are also good. I wanted to give David. Okay, finish up your thought, but I want to give David a chance to kind of.
I want David to talk because I was sidetracked. I apologize, David.
No, but
by the way, can I just say how much I love doing the show with David and you? No, because David airs. Listen, your other guests are great, but there's something about David that makes me feel a little bit smarter about being on the Bladtcast with him.
Well, there's a reason why he became known as the Dark Prince on the old Dennis Miller show, and he even had his own theme song. So the way that this all winds down, any thoughts you have that we didn't cover on the end of the episode proper are fine, but the feeling like this is a backdoor pilot, which is also something that it says on your J-Date profile. J-Date profile says backdoor pilot. Curmudgeon. I forget the other one already. So
limp noodle.
Pilot. Yeah. Which, there's nothing that makes for more of a limp noodle than being a backdoor pilot. Over to you, David. What do you got?
Yeah.
What did you think about the way that it ended, including the end scenes?
Again, it had to be. They were hamstrung. And I'm I'm on this, but I'm originally, there's a way to do things if you're an honest writer. And the way to do it is you write what you think is good, and hopefully people will respond to it. If you do it backwards, and what I mean by that is if you go to the audience and say, what do you think is good? I'll write that. You end up with something that's washed out because, it's kind
Well,
of
let
like
me just to interject on that. It's kind of what Tom was talking about. Star Trek is the franchise that seems to be the most accommodating. You were talking about people didn't like the way the Klingons looked in season 1 of Discovery. They
sure.
didn't own it. They were just like, we're going to undo that. We're going to try to explain that away. Star Trek Picard, the current crop of showrunners and producers behind it, didn't like some of the things that they did earlier. So they're like, well, let's shake the Etch-a-Sketch a little bit and undo it.
Yeah.
And I think that they are more mindful and course correcting. You know, you were talking earlier about Voyager and some of the decisions that they made. Voyager was the first Star Trek show in 30 years that had to answer to a network. So they were on UPN, whereas previously they'd all been Next Generation and DS9 had both been first run syndication. All of a sudden, the thing that Gene Roddenberry didn't want to work for a network ever again. They had to answer to a network. And then all of a sudden it's like, we need the Borg every week. Enterprise, which I am really not a fan of, was, really, they felt like we gotta, we have to really make this show for a UPN audience. So
you end up with compromised content.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's what the plus is for Paramount Plus. The plus is compromise, right?
I had a friend once that said compromises for pussies. And as harsh as that may seem,
did he write a book on marriage?
No, he didn't.
But he should.
Having been married myself for a while.
Yeah.
But
hang on, I'm gonna text that to my wife.
Again,
Sal says compromises for pussies. Get out of that strike line now.
I think what we have now with Star Trek is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
And from the days of VHS tape, you know what that means when you dubbed one and you dubbed another one off.
And you have like the little color, the little rainbow colors at the bottom.
Right.
My VHS of the Star Wars Holiday Special was like a 4th or 5th generation. Mm-hmm. And I spent $20 for it, and I feel like it was money well spent. But yeah, it had been well loved, let's just say. So yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way to sort of describe this. This is like that VHS tape that we all probably had of our favorite Star Trek episodes, or maybe our favorite Star Trek movie that we recorded off HBO. And you're like, oh, it didn't look like this in the movie theater, but this is what we're being given.
But
so
also, we're both blessed and cursed by the fact that our frame of reference is TOS and everything that came after it. If your generation, whatever they're calling it these days, and your frame of reference is Voyager, then maybe you're not quite as dissatisfied as all three of us are. And that's okay. I get that. But I am down on how they are washing things out to please people first.
And I think you just go ahead. Sorry.
Not taking any creative chances, making real dramatic choices, rather than just getting on your knees and taking care of business.
Well, I think that sort of lends itself to what Tom was saying earlier. It's a different conversation about Star Trek with people who were born before 1980, or in one of our cases before 1970, and when I'm talking about Star Trek with people who are, under 30, their frame of reference is pretty different. Maybe the first Star Trek movie they saw in the theater was like Into Darkness.
Yeah, right.
I really like the first J.J. Abrams movie. That second movie might be good, but the like MacGuffin that Benedict Cumberbatch wasn't Khan until they told you he was Khan. I was like, well, that's just stupid. You should have told us he was Khan if he's going to be Khan. He couldn't look less like Ricardo Montalban. I would not buy fine Corinthian leather from Benedict Cumberbatch, but I don't think that's the point we're trying to make. What was your point, David? Sorry.
No. My point is that, and from going forward, like, what do we have to expect? More washed out dishwater. We're not going to get something.
Are you watching Strange New Worlds, David?
I am. I am.
Yeah, I had to like
He-
nag you for an entire baseball season. I'm like, have you watched it yet? And you're like, no, there's too much baseball on. But I know you did finally watch it, and in
Yeah,
general, you liked it, right? You were pretty
I
happy
like
with it.
it, but but again, there's going to be, this season I want to really knuckle down and see if they're making choices
Well,
that are just like pandering.
as the three of us are talking, I realize if there is any one episode of Star Trek Strange New World season 2 that I hate and I think is really bad, I'm going to talk to the two of you and the two of you only. I don't want anybody to try and bring warmth and their positivity, trying to bring me down with their smiles. I don't want that.
No.
I want to bask in it.
See, I
before
liked
we
that
wrap
about
up,
Strange New World.
what's that?
See, I liked that about Strange New Worlds. It was happier. It's a happier
No, it was
show.
happier.
And the point, but the one point I want to tag on to what you both just said is my problem with Picard was they took big risks, and I don't think they took good risks, and I don't think they made good choices. They were lazy choices.
They didn't take risks. They made bad choices.
Fine, I'll take that.
Sometimes those are one and the same.
Yeah.
Depending on if you've got a number of ladies of the evening in your cell phone, those are big risks and bad choices.
Yes.
But I don't think that's what we were talking about.
But if I were allowed to make one last point, is
sure.
I think Strange New Worlds is a better show than Discovery and whatnot. And I hope that when they go forward, and I don't know if the fans agree, I don't know if the numbers are higher on Strange New Worlds, I just don't. But if there are other people who agree with me, my dream for Star Trek in the future is that they look at what is working on Strange New Worlds and apply that to other things. Say what you want. I mean, I can see the sets of Discovery. Like, listen, the scenery on Discovery is beautiful. The bridge is beautiful. I mean, I hate to knock the production designer, the guy who is good enough to be on my podcast, but whoever's doing the color correcting made Picard too dark.
Right.
Dark
can go down the list. Yeah, but I don't think it worked for me. But then again, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, we'll see, because Strange New Worlds will be with us in about 6 weeks, I think June 15th, and I'm looking forward to it. I am not looking forward to a Star Trek Legacy, but they've got so many other things in the hopper that I don't know that we're going to get to it. Obviously, Michelle Yeoh goes and wins an Oscar. All of a sudden, that Section 31 project is right back on the table. As I said, while I was watching the Oscars with my wife, I'm like, I know something that's going to be back. Sorry, what'd you say, David?
I'm just saying, it's like you've got Michelle Yeoh, you got Todd Stashower, you got good things, good dramatic, creative choices, and you kill them. What fun is that?
They figured out a way to have her, and if they were to bring back Captain Shaw, it'd probably be a Mirror Universe Shaw. And what I've said before is that the Mirror Universe Shaw would actually be this really friendly, nice, likable guy. Like, the gruff exterior, it just doesn't have. He's the one guy where the Mirror Universe version is actually like really cuddly.
Captain Ward Cleaver.
What were you going to say, Tom, for our final thought before we get our plugs in?
I heard one random stray interview line that the future of Paramount Plus and Star Trek might be more short form, beginning and ending stuff. Like Section 31, they were talking about, instead of making it a series, make it a 2 or 3 part film. That way, when Michelle Yeoh ups her contract ante, they can do something else. I don't know. I hope that they look at something else that's working. I think more short form stuff is better, so that way they're not destroying my childhood. And again, I don't think they have the creative integrity to go 12 episodes on something. We've now seen that 2 or 3 times. I honestly like the Discovery when they did the Mirror Universe and the Pike universe, or the Pike episodes. Those were really two blocks of 6. Whatever it is.
You're right. Yeah.
I think 12 episodes for one Star Trek plot, as a man who loves Star Trek, I have yet to see anybody do well with that.
Right. And I think that the self-contained nature of Strange New Worlds is what we liked about past Star Trek series.
Right.
You can certainly have multi-part stories. You can have things that run through episodes, but I want to have a sense, it was like a good example is the X-Files had this huge conspiracy behind it, and you got a little bit, but for the most part, it was just like, oh my God, there's a monster in Rochester. We're going to have to go look at it.
But they use the grand conspiracy sparingly.
Yeah.
It's like spice. Right. You can't overspice something.
Yeah. Well, on that note, one of the spiciest voices in New York City is Thomas J. Kelly. Tom, where do people find the Tom Kelly Show?
So you can find it all at TomKellyShow.com. I am on TikTok, Instagram, and JDate as Tom Kelly Show. And I have a callback. And
now we know what the J stands for in Thomas J. Kelly.
Thomas J. Date Kelly. And and then things are, that's the story. And then my stand-up comedy dates are there. And I do a podcast on Mondays and Wednesdays, all at TomKellyShow.com. And I love it when people from the Bladtcast say hi, especially on the YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you will have to be back on the Bladtcast before too long, because I didn't even want to get into your adventures when you were out here in Los Angeles. No one has covered the ground before that New York and Los Angeles are different, and I think we're going to be the first ones to do it. The final comment I wanted to bring in earlier from Dominicus Saxon, they should have had a CGI Q as being young again. That would make his line about being immortal make more sense. But the true wisdom from Dominicus Saxon, never compromise, even in the face of Armageddon. Salman, David Weiss, where do people find you apart from kicking around on the west side of Los Angeles?
Well,
in your aspiration to become a beach bum.
Yes, they can find me on the beach. As you can see, I'm working on my tan. They can find me on Twitter still at DWise Comedy. I'm unverified, but it's me. Also on the Insta at DWise Comedy.
That's good. I'm glad you switched the Instagram so that it's uniform now.
Yes.
So very smart, good branding. And as always, I can be found at Christian DMZ. Please subscribe to the Bladtcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the audio version of the podcast. We've had a good chunk of Star Trek Picard talk the last couple of episodes. When next the audio version finds its way to you, it'll be our first, possibly one big triple stuffed episode, reviews of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So look for that. There's a lot of movies coming. We got Into the Spider-Verse. We got an Indiana Jones movie. So keep going to the movies and keep coming back for the Bladtcast. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Christian DMZ. That's all the time we have for now, but we will see you next time on the Bladtcast. And as an old friend would say, live long and prosper.
And let's go Mets.
That's true.
I don't think Spock said that.